Alrighty, so I guess it's time to hop back on here. I'm a little behind on what I'm trying to do, but I was trying to test fit some stuff earlier today to see if I could get the table, a work desk, into this space in here. It's literally this, well, it's literally this wide. Like that's a useful measurement for you. It's this wide all the way across and about twice as wide this way. So it's just enough space to fit a table that I'd have to down every time to get in and out of the room. So that's not going to work. That's unfortunate. And I'm suspicious that I didn't set this to public. Let's see how we're doing. Are we on public? I'm going to crash the computer by doing two windows at the same time, but let's just see. Are we public or private? I don't know. Anyway, so in the meantime, while we're waiting for that to wake up, yeah, it's set to private. It's set to private. Why does it default to private? That's such a dick move. Stop doing that. All right, for real this time. All right, so, and why do you keep slipping? It's not that slippy a surface. So anyway, I was testing out the fit for the table today. Yeah, welcome back. Testing out the fit for the table in the room, not going to work. It just doesn't work. There's not enough room to set up the table in this space to do what I wanted to do with it. So that's not going to work that way. I think my next best option is the dresser top over here, maybe. I can set up the screen sort of up against the wall with the laptop sort of in this arrangement. If I can remove the screen on the laptop maybe, or even just reposition it. I'll have to try that out in the next day or two, but that means relocating the printer. And if I relocate this all to that space, it's going to shoot against that. I'll be backlit during the daytime. Not ideal. It might be possible to clear off the bureau over there, do it up there, pull a green screen behind me on it. I don't know. That'd be a heck of a trick. And I don't think it really solves the problem of getting me a work surface that I can point down onto. So as it stands right now, I still don't have a place to shoot video, like a shot down onto a surface kind of video. So I'm trying to figure that part out. And in minor frustration with some of those things today, I did some errands just to escape the places that I've had day after day of almost no time off from work, and finally get some time off to do my errands, and it's just a day of doing errands. I didn't want to leave the house because I go out of the house every day to go to work, and I'm not getting anything out of that experience that's enjoyable anymore. So there's a part of me that's like, I don't want to go anywhere if I don't have to go to work. But if I don't go somewhere, there's a bunch of things I still need to do to get done on a daily basis. So I got to figure that out. I think I'm getting to the point where I should be able to do some daily activities for a few hours each day at least. And it's been one of those days where everything I tried to do didn't turn out right. That was kind of frustrating. So like one of the things, I've been looking for I have a pair of camera glasses that need to be charged, but none of my current chargers are the right kind for that kind of setup. So I got to figure out where the charger is or find another one to do it. And then, you know, at the same time, it's a pair of glasses, but it's not really a pair of glasses. These are not functional lenses. You can't see out of those. I don't know what the deal with that is. I don't know if that was intended when I purchased them from the manufacturer. I don't know if it was the intent from the manufacturer to have them not have functional lenses, because you literally can't see through these. Well, you can kind of see through them, but they don't actually. Oh, cool! That's super awesome. There we go. I couldn't read anything through them if I wanted to, so they're a bit of a mess as far as glasses go. And maybe it's a protective layer, and I just can't seem to get it off. It's like glued on. But yeah, so it's something I haven't really played with. Ooh, I think I got it. I think I got it. Maybe we're being able to claim this back, huh? Is it protective layer on both sides? That's a little bit better. I think we got a protective layer of plastic on both sides. Yes, sir. Clearly, I've just been given up too easy. So they've been pushed aside because I got frustrated with them and then forgot about them. And so now I've got a potential method of, if I can get a charger on this, if I can get this to charge, it uses a micro SD card, and I think I lost the manual for it. So it's a generic, so it's not like I can look up the brand and find the manual online. So that's no good. But the riddle to solve here is to figure out what kind of, I think it's technically like a 2-button system. You've got your on, and then you've got your, 3-button system. On, still photo, and then video. It's supposed to get 1080p. I doubt it's actually 1080p. Okay, is that a functional lens now? It is in fact a functional lens. Awesome. They actually work now. Wow. I feel like an idiot that it took me that much effort to figure that out. It's been one of those days. Okay, so that's one lens in. Let's peel the other guy. And now maybe we'll have a functional pair of video glasses if we can find a charger. And I think I've got a charger that'll do this somewhere around here. If I don't, I think I can probably get one for less than $5. So it should be viable. Okay. I can't believe I gave up that easy earlier on that. To be fair, I think it was during a time where I just didn't have the time or the patience to devote the energy to figuring out something that should have been marked. Okay, come on, you can do this. There we go. Now it's possible that I could do the video setups that I need for what I want to do in the near future via via a setup table that I can take up and down. But that's, you know, that's one of those things where like it seems like way more work than it's worth. I guess it depends on what I'm trying to achieve and what I can achieve. All right, so we might actually have a pair of, at least they're usable as glasses now. Oh, good. Now I look like one of those guys on a truck with glasses and a goatee that's constantly complaining about them liberals or whatever. So that's at least a turnaround for the results of the day. I got something working for a change. Well, partly working. I don't have it charged yet. I bet you I have a cable somewhere probably in this room right now, somewhere. I could plug into this, plug it into my USB wall charger, charge it up. I think I have a reader for a micro SD card I can pop in. I'm a little hesitant because this is purchased secondhand. But I'm a little hesitant to put somebody's SD card into one of my computers that may have been in somebody else's infected computer at some point. So that's one of the projects sort of done today. And I kind of want to use this more for the Roving Jack channel, where I might be working on a project, and this right here in the middle is the camera lens. So it sees what I see when I'm working on something. God, they're squeaky. But they don't squeak when they're on my head, so that works. I could probably... I'm willing to bet you that there's a timestamp and a date on it that you have to figure out how to set it, or don't bother. And then I would be willing to bet you there's sort of like a 10-minute timestamp or a 10-minute runtime for video recording. And it looks like the access to the sides of these is through some panels that have... Ooh, is that a microphone jack? Maybe. Or no, that might just be an LED light. I really can't see that well enough right now. But anyway, so if I need to get into the interiors to tinker around with it, I might be able to just open them up. One of the things I wanted to do was see if I could take a camera like this with a activation switch and battery storage, and use it to... I think the battery's on this side. The controller's on this side. Is there a microphone at all? There may not be any audio, which, I mean, honestly, it's probably all right if there's no audio capabilities. Because in the long run, what I think I'm probably going to end up doing is using this for project video that I can dub over afterwards. But yeah, so we have a potentially high def camera that I can use for what I'm looking at kind of shots. And that was, I guess, the half victory of the day. I need to find the cable for it, but other than that, I think we could probably call that a potential success. And then I don't think I have a table that I can do some of the video shots of gameplay, where I can put the two cameras together. Until I can disassemble the broken screen on this one, pull the webcam off of there, find a mount for it, maybe fix the screen on that. I could potentially fix the screen on that. But if I could get that screen to work in place of this one, that removes a lot of pieces that I could actually use this surface that I'm working on right now. I mean, the thing is, the hinges for that laptop broke off the screen. The screen is actually just flopping and hanging by the two cords, one that's supposed to power the screen but clearly isn't connecting anymore, so that's pulled free. So I might be able to resolder those points and get it working again. And then on the other side is the very thin cable, which I think is run the webcam. And so those are the two things holding it on. And I have it resting on a surface so that they're not dangling by it, because that just strains the cords. But if I could patch up that thing, all I'd have to do is do a permanent mount, or alternatively, one of the things I've been considering is making a briefcase setup for it, so that there's a base with a airflow spot underneath of it for the base of the computer on one side, and the lid closes down. The lid holds the monitor separate by a spaced area. I might be able to make it a portable laptop again. But yeah, so if I can get that, and I've got the ear infection going on again. So somebody brought a cold into work, so I've got that going for me. But I might be able to get this laptop more functional than it is, and then I can use this screen separately for other things. That would allow me to use the desk space that's right in front of me, because I got a whole bit of desk space in front of here. Put a layout tray with space to do things on, and a mounting arm for the webcam. That just means it's more work for me to have to build the setups to make that happen. But if I can make that happen, it actually is a more functional solution to what I need. And I need to maybe, if I'm going to do some of that, I can pull my chair up here and do a thing I can set up behind me with a green screen on it. And that should do most of everything I need done for shooting video in this space. So you'd get a, I was going to point the camera down, but it's a mess. I've got probably about 1.5 feet of space from front to back that I can use for a surface right now, and it's about 3 feet wide. So 3 feet by 1.5 feet. It's not a bad space for shooting things on. It's just off to the side of it, I've got another surface on which I've got the laptop. I can keep the laptop over there. If I could get the screen tipped back up and get the screen working and the webcam on it working while I have this webcam set up, I should be able to use OBS to shoot and edit video. Well, I wouldn't necessarily be able to do a lot of editing, but in-camera editing I could probably do. I can set the mic up. The mic that you gave me, I can unscrew from the base. I can build a mount that it can fit onto. That could be floor, wall, or ceiling setup. I don't know that I want to do ceiling, because I'm pretty sure I'd break the ceiling. So right there, I just need to get a same kind of screw and mount it this way, potentially, if I want to talk into it like this, or mount it over here and use it that way, or just set up a clamp arm on the side of the table. I should be able to do that relatively easily. I don't know if that's making an awful lot of noise in contact with the microphone. I almost dropped it too. The weighted base. That's okay. Come on, you're just arguing for no reason at this point. Now I can't get it back on. That's super useful. All right, so I have some potential options for work surface video shooting. It's just going to take a little more time to get it to work right, I think. So it's not ideal, but in the long run, I think the portable work surface works better. I mean, honestly, if things work out well enough in the long run, I might even just upgrade my computer here to something better. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember what the statistics on this laptop were. I remember thinking they were pretty good for what I needed. They were pretty good for what I needed until the screen broke. Now, I was at a thrift store earlier where I could check out some things, and they have some refurbished computers with no hard drive in them. And they had a 3.1 or a 3.2 gigahertz processor, dual core computer. So I might be able to, yeah, and it wasn't terribly expensive. I might be able to take one of those, use this monitor for it, and set them up separately. You know, there's some options there, and they're not hugely expensive options that give me some opportunities to figure some things out. I think it's probably going to be the end of the month before I do my first trial run of a video using that setup, which is a little disappointing because I'd like to get more done. But I also feel like I could also make some distinct changes. So I could make a clip-on work surface for the stand that I'm using right now, and have that clip-on work surface be something that I can have sort of like almost like with your phone, you have phone cases. If I could make different clip-on surfaces for different functions, like a work mat to do stuff for Roving Jack where I'm cutting through things and demoing stuff, that's a better surface to work on, rather than trying to set up a tripod and arrange positions that work for what I need. I'll have something that I can clip a top onto this tray and have a work surface that I can work on, and have anchor points for an overhead camera shot, and then swap that out for a different cover, but with the same clip for the overhead shots for game demos for this channel. And so I do think that's potentially the better way to go. The green screen options for behind me, I think, are also possibilities of something I can mount to the back of the chair that I'm using, so that I can literally just put like a kite behind the chair, and it holds the screen up behind me, and potentially a lighting rig to light it, so that I can green screen behind me and do what I need to do. So with that, and now we're one step closer to getting these camera glasses working. And if I can get the laptop working, I might have a whole bunch of options for things to do. It's just, yeah, trying out that larger table in here, it was quickly apparent, like, I might be able to squeeze that table in here, and it might give me all the surface I need to do stuff. But I'm going to have to move an entire monitor, laptop, microphone, work surface area every time I want to get out of bed or get out the door. I'm going to have to move it all. And it's a pain. Like, this is hard enough. I'm debating whether or not I want to change this chair out for something better. I know somebody who has a office chair that might work better. The problem with that is that office chair won't be as maneuverable as this little dinky, practically folding chair is. It means that I need to get a slightly more permanent setup for what I'm doing, because I might be able to move it off to the side if I make a few adjustments to things I've got in here. But it's like I might be able to swivel this around against this area, partly obscuring my closet door, but that would allow me to wheel the chair around it so that it's out of the main passageway in and out of the room. It's not ideal, but it could work. I was trying to use the other room last year at one point, but that was before it got acquired by some unfriendly guest, and then they're no longer there, but it's become a workout room for the landlord who's not using it, but it's got all the stuff in it. So at this point, it's like I don't want to have to. I mean, I'd have to take things in and take them out every time I did something in there too. So I don't think it's an improvement over the circumstances. I might even just see if I can build a custom work surface that folds away and transports well. Because the table design that I was going to play with today, that's interesting that the camera picks that up as a big white spot. It's a laser pointer. Sorry. ADD kicking in. The table I was trying to set up today is one of those that folds in half. It's an old one from like the 60s and 70s, I would say. That's a sheet metal, bent, hinged in the middle, folds closed, and has a handle on top that carries like a briefcase. But I would say it's about the size of a sheet of plywood. And it's partly because you need to have a certain size to have the legs. The table would probably be just maybe 4 or 5 inches taller than what I'm currently using for this table. But it's also, in order to get the legs to reach from that height to the floor and have them fold up under it, it requires certain things to be a certain length. If I wanted to build a different setup, I might be able to build a shorter, simpler table with a fold-out set of legs that has an extender portion on it that I could get to fold better, be right to the size. But again, that's going to take a couple weeks in a workshop. I'm going to have to do some design elements for a couple weeks before that. So it's easily a month worth of work just to build that setup. Whereas I think I can get this working in the same amount of time with less work. So that's the idea for that. In the meantime, I've been playing around with some gaming stuff. One of the things that I was talking with some other gamers and talking about doing some of my ideas for doing one of each edition of Dungeons and Dragons playtests and the different universes that were suited for that. And I got to revisiting the Dark Sun universe again, which, I mean, it's still awesome as all get out. I'm still super fanning off of it because it's just such a unique universe. Now there are a few things I don't like that they eventually did. It's one of those things where you started with a story, you started with a setting that was absolutely amazing, and it ran for over a decade. And by the end of that decade, they said, "Oh yeah, let's do an update about all the new things that you could add to this universe." And like most of them sort of wrecked it. And I debate whether or not some of them are really good ideas, but maybe not for that universe. I debate some of it. I was looking at some of it earlier today, actually, and like the original version was just this sort of John Carter of Mars meets what's the other one? Frank Herbert's Dune. So John Carter of Mars meets Frank Herbert's Dune, and that's really like an overwhelming theme on some of the story involved with it. But it also has elements of, like, when I was thinking of how to translate it over to the newer systems, trying to figure out how to describe it to players who aren't familiar with it all, there's an aspect of the Dark Sun universe that is, you have these pharaohs, essentially. They're based off of different cultural themes. So you would have one of the city states is a city state ruled by a guy who's sort of themed on Aztec and Mayan themes, and one of them is themed on sort of like a Babylonian, and one of them is themed sort of like a Egyptian. And so you might have like an Asian style version of that on one of them too. And there are these emperor gods, these god emperors. In a lot of ways, they're very similar to Frank Herbert's Dune, in that you have these god emperors. Excuse me. You have these god emperors who have the power to command and control huge regions of a desert world, and their power also is changing them into other creatures. In this case, they're turning into dragons. Secret, and only certain people know that fact. But these dragon kings or sorcerer kings are also sort of like holding a monopoly on magic use in the kingdoms. There are some rebel magic users out there, but they also are powerful enough that they can grant favored servants the ability to cast magic. And so it's sort of like gods giving clerics the ability to perform miracles, only it's god emperors giving their Templar servants the ability to cast spells. And it's not heal the sick or cure the blind. It's strike down my enemies with lightning bolts, kind of granting them power. And the thing more than anything else that it reminds me of is something that seems to have come after. I'm debating, like I can't remember, and that was one of the things I was trying to look up earlier, is the Stargate series. I believe Dark Sun came out in the early 90s, late 80s. So 89 to 91 is the time frame I'm thinking of the first Dark Sun supplements. But I seem to feel like maybe the movie for Stargate came out around the same time. I can't decide. But with that being said, the Jaffa and the Goa'uld from the Stargate universe are very similar. You have these powerful beings who are posing as gods, who have the ability to empower the people who serve under them with additional powers. And so in a lot of ways, the Templars of these emperor gods, god emperors, are very similar to the Jaffa in the Stargate TV series. I don't know if they really got enough detail in the movie to really say that it may just be a coincidence that that theme is so similar between the two of them. But yeah, it's sort of like having Barsoom from the John Carter of Mars universe. With John Carter of Mars universe had the four-armed green Martians, and in this case, you have these praying mantis people with four arms living in the desert realms, and they're very similar to the John Carter four-armed Martians. And the sort of city-states of the Dark Sun setting are very similar to the people of Mars that John Carter is in conflict with sometimes, the human-like people of Mars. And at the same time, very similar to Duke Leto, Atreides, and the family extended from that in Dune. There's not any like spice or worms of Arrakis on Dark Sun setting. but so in that sense, it's Stargate meets Barsoom, John Carter of Mars meets Dune. And there are little bits of a few other things in there. It's sort of hard to really kind of peg it down to each of the others, but the three big contributors definitely, that helps it be understood. Now, the way this game is played, and I mean, at this point, I would love to just make a converted edition version and play it with some people, but I realize that might be difficult to make happen. And even if I could make it happen, I can't guarantee that I can get agreement from people to let recording happen. And if I can get them to agree to audio recording, if they don't want to do video recording, it's like, it's hard to tell which would be the way to go. And so I'm just trying to figure it out. But I've gotten so back into it so much that I really want to just play a game of Dark Sun I wouldn't mind playing it as a player, but right now I want to introduce other people to it. I want to play a game as a DM, a dungeon master, or a game master, where I introduce people to this setting. And the way I'm thinking of doing it is very similar to I keep hedging back towards my own setting that I've been building. There's a part of me that's like, the Dark Sun setting was a 2nd edition D&D. To translate it into 5th edition, there's a lot to change. So looking through it, I did some looking through on the monsters list today, and some of the tools for how to convert monsters into playable characters. So in 5th edition, there are rules if you want to play a Kenku, which is a crow person. They have a beak and feathers, but they do not have the ability to fly. They have arms and legs like a human, but they've got a head like a crow. And they're generally played off as sort of like less intelligent. They don't have the ability to speak their own language. They can only mimic the sounds of other beings to communicate. So if you wanted to play one of those as a character, instead of having them be little thieving monsters that attack you at a certain point in the game, there are rules to convert that monster into a playable character. And so you can do that with a lot of the monsters out there. And each of them has to have a mechanism by which they're converted over to the player stats. So when you build a character, you roll a certain set of abilities, and then when you pick the race of character that you're playing, that race can affect those stats. So if you're playing a mountain dwarf, you're going to take your 6 stats for strength, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. You're going to take each of those stat numbers that you rolled, somewhere between, usually going to be between 8 and 16 is where you're going to average. And you take those stats for each of them, and then you choose which race you're going to have. And the mountain dwarf is a +2 to constitution and a +2 to strength. That's mountain dwarf. Now, hill giant, or a half giant, is I believe it's a +2 to strength, +1 to constitution, or something like that. And orcs are half orcs are similar. And just going through those numbers and then trying to see how they fit to the Dark Sun characters, because the Dark Sun characters wouldn't have some of those races, but they had races that the system stopped having when they moved out of 2nd edition. So like the character race of Mulls, which are MUL, are a cross between humans and dwarves. So like if you think of Gimli having a child with, what is it, Eowyn from Lord of the Rings, and they have a child together, it would be like making a mule, which is why they spell it MUL. They're essentially telling you this is like breeding horses and donkeys together, and you get a mule, and they're usually sterile, but they've got some of the bulky sturdiness of a dwarf and the size and versatility of a human, and so they're very powerful and versatile slaves to have more than anything. So that's an interesting character race, and they're very big in the Dark Sun setting, but they don't exist anywhere else. And so the only versions we have are from second edition. So trying to run the conversions, golly, trying to run the conversions over from second edition to fifth edition. I'm like, all right, so how do they compare to other things? And just try to sort of source out what made the most sense for converting them. And so I got a lot of that done today, and I was doing the look through on converting over some of the classes. And this is where I tend to sort of move back towards my own custom world build that I was doing, because I keep falling back on the fact that the Warlock class and the Cleric class are like, they're just sort of like very similar to each other. They're basically two different beings who get magic from a patron of some kind. Now, a cleric gets theirs from a god. A warlock gets theirs from a fiend, demon, elf, or angel. And they sign on for that sort of grant me power and I will do your bidding in the world kind of situation. Both of those things are so similar that I feel like the distinction is not necessary. It's just a flavor aspect, except for clerics use generally healing and protective magics, and warlocks are using more like wizard magics. But in the Dark Sun setting, where you don't have gods, you don't really have clerics. They kind of turned it over into you summon elemental spirits for your power. But then you're moving off into the territory of the druids, which is its own class now, which wasn't really much of a class back in second edition. I think it was an extension of the clerical class. So it's sort of like bending these things back into shape. My reflex is almost to say, like, nope, you're Templars who are not clerics, but actually have a pact with the Sorcerer Kings and are granted their power through their worship of them. That's a warlock. And I kind of want to do that and sort of grant warlock access to some clerical spells so that they can be warlock clerics. I don't know. I still have a tendency to want to go that route. And that's sort of based off of what I thought made the most sense when I was building my own custom system. The other thing to take in mind when dealing with Dark Sun setting is they have a lot of exploration of the idea of the witch hunts, sort of. The history of Dark Sun was, once upon a time, there were only hobbits, essentially, halflings, who lived in the world, and they were able to change their environment through certain ages and created all the other races from themselves. And at one point, a being came into the world and was studying the world and trying to figure out how to fix things that they didn't like, and they hatched on the first discovery of magic. And when he tapped into magic, he found that the more he tapped, the more he could change. But he also was drawing the power for the magic from life. So when he drew too much, it would kill life in the area around him. And that's sort of why, like, magic in the Dark Sun setting is drawing on life and it's killing the world. But there was a major war at one point between magical people fighting each other, and they drew so much power for this war that they turned the world into a wasteland. And that wasteland, the people who inhabit it, anybody seen wielding any magic is immediately hunted down. They're considered a danger and a villain and a monster for destroying the world that they live in. Now, there are ways to tap that magic without killing any of the life you're tapping into, but it's much trickier, and most people would resort to the defiler magic, the one that corrupts the environment and kills things around it. So they do they have this whole witch hunt theme to it, where anybody wielding magic other than the God Kings and their disciple Templars, they are the only ones who can wield magic. So there's sort of like witch hunts. And so there aren't wizards, there aren't really clerics, they're warlocks, and you can have wizards that are not. You could have wizards that do the tap into life force and kill things aspect, and you can have wizards that are tapping into magic that doesn't kill the environment around them, but it's meant to be difficult to allow that to happen. But meanwhile, all throughout this setting, there are people all have a natural psychic ability capability, and that aspect of the setting is, it's putting wizards back in without putting wizards back in is what they're doing. But they try to give it enough of a distinctive flavor that it has to be different. It's much more similar to the monk's abilities in 5th edition D&D than it is a wizard. So that feels like it sort of needs to be revamped. And 5th edition really hasn't addressed how they're handling their psionic abilities, is what they're called. So, like, I feel like there's room for a custom homebrew setting to it, but I also feel like if I do too much homebrewing, I'm departing from the gameplay world and the 5th edition D&D that people would be playing it in. So I'm like, how much space do I have to adjust it? And I feel like, it's sort of a lost in doing a talk about video without having a setup pointing down and doing just like a simple demo of gameplay aspects of how that would be different. So, like, having the setup down in front of me where I have the camera pointed at it and I'm saying essentially like, okay, here's a psionicist, here's a wizard, here's a cleric, here's a Templar, and these are how they're going to perform differently and how they function using the rule sets of 5th edition versus the rule sets of 2nd edition. Like, that illustrative example, I think, would be easier to just do some simple gameplay demonstrations of. And so that's sort of one of the things I want to try to do for gameplay on tabletop gaming. Now, story-wise, I think I'm pretty straightforward with how to make a good story out of some of this. Video game aspects, I do think would be interesting to try to figure out at some point, maybe with screen captures of software, trying to figure out how to code stuff. Because ultimately, I think it would be fun to really just make it sort of like episodes of a program, a serialized program about characters in a setting that people could watch like a movie or a TV show. And I want to kind of do that on this channel. There will be aspects of breaking down the mechanics and talking about how some of these things work with each other and achieve certain effects, and how to translate those over into writing, tabletop gaming, and video gaming potentially. So those are sort of my hopes going forward. I'm sort of totally fascinated with delving back into some of these old things that I haven't touched in years. It's sort of fun to explore. And I've rambled for about 50 minutes about these topics, so I think we're pretty close to the end of the night here. I need to go grab dinner and get ready to go to bed so that I can go to work tomorrow. But theoretically, tomorrow, I should be home in enough time to do some stuff during the day before my nighttime video. And I should be here for my nighttime video so that I can get that all worked out. I got a lot of errands done today. I feel like I achieved a fair amount. And I also feel like half the things I tried to achieve didn't get achieved, but I still did a lot. So here's hoping we can do more tomorrow and it's not a complete derail. All right. And here's hoping whoever has the shift after me shows up, because I'm done with that covering other people's shifts without anybody asking me. Well, I'm not done. If they're going to pay me for it, I'll do it. But because I need the money right now. All right. I'll say goodnight. And I'm glad to hear you're still doing all right out there. And here's hoping good health all around for all of us. And now I'm probably coming down with a cold, but we'll see how bad it gets. I'll still survive. All right. It's not the China flu or whatever that is, that coronavirus.